President Cyril Ramaphosa expected to face a barrage of questions from members of parliament today. MPs are seeking answers over the 2020 theft at his luxury Phala Phala game farm in Limpopo. Now, since news of the incident broke, Ramaphosa has been under immense pressure to explain what happened. Presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says Ramaphosa is more than willing to answer any questions about the saga when he appears today. Let's get more on this now, and we're joined in studio by our reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo, who keeps a beady eye on political matters in the country. Very good morning to you. Let's talk about Phala Phala. The president's spokesperson, very clear that the president is willing to answer any questions, and I place emphasis on any questions. He has since not been willing to respond to anything that involves Phala Phala because the excuse from the president is that law enforcement processes are underway there. Until those are concluded, only then will I say anything. So, might we expect him to say anything beyond that today?
I highly doubt it, Goli. I mean, the president on numerous occasions from the time this scandal broke, I remember quite distinctly being at the Limpopo ANC conference where that was the first opportunity to doorstep the president after a few days prior. Arthur Fraser had actually deposed that affidavit making allegations. I mean, there are certain questions that I think the president could respond to without betraying the nature of the investigation. So, for an example, there are questions around whether or not it was $4 million, which in rands is around 60 million rands. He says that number has been exaggerated, quite significantly. It must have been in the 100,000s. But why can't you give an exact amount if really all was above board, if you're maintaining innocence? How would that betray the nature of the investigation, for an example? Another thing that you could also clarify is, the issue around whether or not the money was actually, why there was so much money in your home. Because if you look at even the Forex and exchange controls laws, you're not supposed to keep it in your home for longer than 30 days.
Yeah.
So, there are certain things that you can take the public into your confidence about. It's not the first time a president in the world has faced, this type of a scandal. And the longer the president keeps quiet is the longer then it leaves a vacuum for, those faction within his own organization and other leaders of opposition to actually take advantage of the silence that is now being given to the public about an issue that really pertains to him and his stance on anti-corruption.
A wonder, Ziyanda, is whether the president has created this crisis or has made the story around the robbery at his farm more problematic than it should have been by remaining silent.
So, there are several schools of thoughts about this, because some would say the longer he keeps quiet, like I said, the more you give a vacuum for people to use this as a political football in the arena. We already know that there's an impeachment process, an impeachment committee that's been set up to look into Phala Phala in Parliament, the first of its kind, and that was led by ATM leader Ngcobo. So that's one example of how that vacuum or lack of explanation has led to all these processes. The other side, an interesting school of thought that's come out from some who are analyzing this is that he shouldn't. You remember there was an initial statement that the president released a few days after the scandal broke, but then some will say that particular statement left more questions than answers. So you admit that there was a robbery. Okay, so if you admit that there was a robbery, who did you report it to? Why did it not appear in the report by the SAPS that has to be delivered, in every year from the police minister about, security measures? So you took it to your head of a security, Wally Roda. Oh, okay, it turns out now he apparently does not even have the necessary security clearance to be the head of the Presidential Protection Unit. So some would say that, the way in which he responded in that initial statement is also what, created more questions, and that maybe he should have kept quiet from the beginning. So you have these varying hearing views, but again, unless we hear it from the president himself, which is also something that, if you recall, even former Northwest NC leader Supra Mahumapelo raised, to say he hasn't even addressed even his own political home, the ANC, which makes it difficult for ANC members to defend him on the ground about what happened.
Yeah.
Because all we know right now is what he said, at least to the public protector. And you recall recently there was a move to release what he has, the submissions that he's made to the public protector's office.
Final question, and perhaps this is one element that we can speak about with more certainty, and that is that there is not going to be chaos, people being taken out of Parliament. Why is that? Because the President is going to be appearing in this session virtually, and so that at least takes the pressure away from the Speaker calling on security to remove certain people who won't behave. But is that a strategy, you think, on the part of the President, that perhaps this will allow him the time to respond adequately to matters without there being much disruption? Why the decision to have this done virtually? Yes, the alert has been put out to say he has engagements in Gauteng, but that's a strategy, is it not?
No, it absolutely is. I have no doubt that this is part of a strategy just to take away from, the chaos around the heckling. I mean, not to say that the heckling cannot take place virtually. We've seen this on several occasions, but it's not enough heckling that would precipitate the calling in of the so-called bouncers into the House. Some would even argue that this is his clever way of evading accountability. We know for the longest time, Parliament has had to have hybrid sittings as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. You've had engagements in Gauteng. Okay, that's great, but you've always had other engagements outside of Cape Town before. So it would be very interesting if we were to get someone like Vincent Magwenya to come and tell us what would stop the President, who, unlike the rest of us, has a private plane that could take him anywhere after his appearance in Parliament. And I think that is actually going to be one of the first things that becomes a sticking point as proceedings kick off later on this afternoon.
Yeah, and I'll probably be right to suggest that the last time that the President appeared, that's when the EFF resumed the whole heckling and being moved out of Parliament. And so perhaps this is exactly to try and avoid that situation. Thank you very much. That's my colleague Ziyanda Ngcobo, always keeping a beady eye on political matters.